of the most important things we can do is to elevate the director of special education to that cabinet level position, and to make sure that in every department, we're considering special education as part of how we plan academics, part of how we plan discipline, part of how we plan every single thing. We fix it by baking it in as deeply as we bake anything else in. We've done it with SEL. We've done it with arts and education. We need to also do that with special education services. We need to do that with the spectrum of things that we're doing in our schools. So I think the single most powerful thing is that. I think hand in hand with that, I believe for special education needs, I'm sorry about my dog back there, I usually lock him out.
He has something to say, I'm sure.
We need an ombudsman, we need to return that position. And we need parent manuals that tell parents what they need, not what we tell parents as a form of control, but tell parents, give parents tools, make parents partners. And we need to really be serious about that too. And I think by elevating special ed and baking it in, that happens with parent engagement. That happens if we're thoughtful about it, every single place it needs to be.
Thank you, Lynn. And Jennifer, will you go next?
Definitely. I'm gonna let you guys tell me what is the most important fix for SPED. You have an incredible list. You guys are the experts in this area. So my role as a trustee is to be there to advocate for what are the best practices. Things that I see as a high priority are fixing our staffing needs, making sure that our staffing needs align with what our students need. As has been discussed throughout this panel presentation, that our staffing should have less discretion for our principals and should be have more of a student focus and more guidelines around and requirements around what staffing levels have to be on each campus. Those staffing levels need to meet, they need to match the IEPs of the students on campus, rather than just telling students and families, this is what we've got, you get what you get. We need to have accountability for our superintendent, and we need to have meaningful community engagement. These are things that the district needs to fix across the board. It is that what happens is that our special education students are disproportionately impacted when the district fails to do its job well on any aspect. So bringing that increased attention to SPED issues is a top priority. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we'll go to District 2. John, will you start us off?
Oh, you skipped Piper.
Oh, Piper. I wrote Piper and I scratched out Piper and then I said John.
You scratched me out?
No, like I'm making sure I call everyone and I anticipated. Piper, please, we would love to hear from you. My apologies.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I really, I really appreciate that VELA and CSEE exist. I think it's incredible, and I loved watching your videos and learning about all the things that you do and the way that you're working with parents to become advocates. But it also really pisses me off that you have to exist, right? Like, it makes me angry that that's not a part of what the district does, is empower parents and students and teachers to be those advocates. And so I think it's awesome that you're there. You're obviously doing good work, but that should be the job of the district. And I think that that is a huge piece. And I think that that advocacy and sort of teaching role that the district could do goes hand in hand with really making parents that speak all languages, parents of all abilities, parents, family members, caregivers, whoever is with that kiddo, feels welcome and feels like when they walk into an IEP meeting that they're not an alien and that the people around them aren't aliens, that they know that they're in a supportive group. And I really think that that is an important piece that needs to start from the top, that needs to be part of those superintendent metrics, but also just needs to be a part of the culture in AISD. And the other thing is, you guys ask a great question on the written response about campus autonomy. And that's been really interesting learning about that as well. And I think one of the things about that is that having campus autonomy can work really well as long as that school community and those kids and those families are getting what they need. But so often it means that those administrators are able to sort of slough off the stuff that they don't feel as comfortable doing. That might be working on equity, that might be building sustainability, and it might be working with their special education community. And so I think that looking at sort of what the baseline needs to be for every campus, for every administrator, for every community is really important. Allowing that autonomy, I don't want to take that away entirely. I think it leads to some really cool innovation on campuses, but we need to make sure that every administrator knows what the baseline needs to be in terms of how the special education community, families, teachers, staff are treated.
Thank you, Piper. And again, apologies on my part. Okay, District 2, John, can we hear from you?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Oh, that's a new thing. So the one thing I would push for is that special ed office that was moved up to the associate level. And I would want it to be done, of course, with as many people on the board members part of this. I'd want the community to be pushing for that. As Lynn pointed out, it needs to be baked in. Imagine having an introduction to kindergarten where special ed specialists, special ed parents, other kinds of specialists talk about the different kinds of journeys people go through when they're going to go through 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, and the different ways these experiences shape them, so that all parents know the different possibilities that face their kids and different kinds of experiences that people have. I've had a great experience in Dawson, and I might be an exception, but sometimes these IEPs can be learning experiences, can be empowering. This is not what I hear from most parents, but they can be a learning process. They can be a way to think about your education in new ways. So to go from the special ed office to the tracking to the IEP, it's really about having the special ed office be actually a place where people think about disability in a central way. One of my favorite mentors in the academy is someone who works on disability in the National Museum of American History. And she thinking about difference as a way to people experience the world in different ways. And her project is to get people to think about the different ways in which people experience it. I'd love to see people think about that process as sort of like, this is a really cool thing thinking about disability allows us to do. It's a historian. I mean, obviously she's a teacher as well, but thinking about these things in a broad, inclusive, and democratic way, I think is a way forward connected to the special ed office being raised.
Thank you, John. And Ofelia, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, ableism and racism are deeply rooted in the structure of our schools. And so although, yes, we need a cabinet at central office, we also need a cabinet on the campuses that includes representatives, parents who have students in all these different areas, parents who want to participate but have been disrespected and ignored, so that they have a way to share with the cabinet downtown what is and is not working. And right now there are not those opportunities. And so we have been missing those opportunities because there's a lot of interest in parents that want to participate but are not welcomed. And so we've got to change that environment, that culture, that we are a community of learners, and it's not, I'm the expert, I'm the principal, I'm the teacher, and I know what's best for your students, but that to be open and accepting and welcoming parents to participate, parents and community. It could be grandparents, it could be an uncle, an aunt, it could be someone who the student trusts, who is the guardian for that child. So we need to create a campus cabinet, because you go into school and although the departments are there, it's dissected in a way that there's no real communication. They don't know what's going on here or what's going on there. So as a trustee, I would want to create that community campus at each school so that there is a holistic approach to helping the student have a lifelong learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ofelia. And now we'll go to District 3, Kevin.
So there needs to be district level vision, and it seems to me that it exists, that there is this sense that our students are gen ed students first, and that there are special needs that need to be met. So I would have started with that, but that is in place on paper. So the next expectation is fidelity to that concept. And there's two quick things. And the first one is really simple, which is scorecard level accountability in this area that has like a metric around that, and probably 2 to 3 indicators tightly associated with that, so that we can hold our superintendent accountable to the outcomes. My expectation is hyper competence on the part of our leader. We pay him about $250,000 a year. We have every right to expect a great deal from them. So then the only other piece I would add is that at the trustee level, we need to continue to be learners so that we clearly understand what the best practices look like. And I only say that because that positions us to be advocates for families that come to us, so that as we're holding the superintendent accountable on an annual basis, in the moment when we see things, we can say, oh my gosh, let me bring this up, and we can have ongoing micro accountability in addition to the macro accountability. But the big thing for me is scorecard level accountability.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Okay, and District 8, Noelita, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity again. I'm always learning something new. So earlier this year, it was, for those of us who were monitoring and have been watching the school board meetings, I think most of us share this sentiment that it was appalling to hear that we had a high-level district official telling the school board that we needed to be really careful about making any additional investments in special education, because we don't want to create a maintenance of effort, MEO problem. And that's a scarcity mindset that has plagued our school district that we need to get rid of. It's risk aversion that's rooted in sacrificing our children, our teachers, and our families. So I would say, in addition to all the things that everybody else has said, which are great ideas, and I would love the board to look at moving forward with those, ultimately we need to pass a budget that aligns with our vision, our policies, and our practices, so that and that is really informed in kind of like a long-term special education improvement, informed by a third-party comprehensive district-wide equity assessment, informed by the very things that I think we've been talking about this evening, parents, teachers, students, best practices from research, positive behavior interventions, UDI. I mean, there's so much that we can build from, but we have to ensure that we are changing our mindset, because, you know, having a school district that has a AAA bond rating is great. Making sure that our district has a budget reserve is essential, but doing that on the backs of students and teachers is unacceptable and arguably immoral. So I think we need public schools and a school board that really understands what public education is about today, and that's social justice, and that's making sure that all kids have a chance to be welcomed and to be included in their education.
Thank you, Noelita. Jared, will you share with us next?
Yes, absolutely. So, man, we got to tone it down to just one point. What is the first go-to? So I had to think about it. And so the initial thought was the budget, you know, and that's the biggest one. But I think that's the easy way out. It's more than that. And so for me, I'd have to agree with one of the past candidates and say that we have to, you know, I get tired of doing all the listening sessions, but at this point with a new set of trustees and a new superintendent, we have extra ears now on board that maybe they haven't been listening in the past, or maybe they have, but we need to hear the actual experiences that our students, our staff members, our parents, our families are experiencing. Once we actually hear those, then we need to put together our plan, because as of right now, we're just walking aimlessly and saying, like Kevin said, basically we're saying on paper, this is what we're doing, this is what, you know, and that's all good and all not, but we need to actually do the work. And so that leads me to the big goal is inclusion into the equity audit that is coming up. Basically, making sure that we're looking at every single campus, seeing which principals have the special education background, right? Because if they have that special education background, then automatically we know that they're going to be forceful advocates. They're going to prioritize our special education students. So that is all in it, and there's so much more that equity audit can reveal for us. But again, it's all about strong, bold, courageous leadership. Serving as the NAACP president at HT for a few years now, I am that bold, courageous leadership. Along with my colleagues on the board, we will make sure that this happens, and we'll hold our superintendent accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And finally, Leticia.
Thank you again. I think parents and advocates are very, very tired of telling the district all that's wrong, and it's time for action. We know the places that are broken. I too would listen to the advocates that are very familiar with exactly the pieces and exactly where, and draw from that to be able to advocate for what needs to be done. We talk about scorecards. The current board will vote on a scorecard before the next board is seated. So if we're going to talk about a scorecard, that's not until next November before this new board will get to identify what goes on the scorecard. So what can be done now? Or what can be done, you could raise up the issue, make sure that people understand this is not just a SPED issue. This impacts all of the students, all of the communities, all of the schools across the district, and here's why. And make sure that our Austin community, AISD community, knows why this is such an important issue, and it deserves everybody's utmost attention to it. So those are the things that I could bring to this issue as far as an awareness and a commitment to meeting with the advocate groups and understanding exactly where we can pinpoint and make some necessary progress on this issue.